I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be. Hello, everyone. This is Todd Screama and a good dear friend of mine, Kris Ringrose, and we are doing a podcast on the 9 different steps to hire awesome employees. And Kris and I were just chatting before the call, and it's probably the most important topic that gets the least amount of work done on it. In other words, people don't work on this and then they hire a bunch of crazy people and then they wonder why their business doesn't work well. So we're going to do this in such a way that I think fits any small to large business owner, because I think these are more timeless principles. We're going to go over 9 steps. I'm sure we'll sprinkle in a bunch of other stuff. So just so you guys know, Kris Ringrose is one of our executives at Summit. And we've been working together for years, and she is really good at hiring and training. She's really good at holding people accountable. She's one of the best people I've ever seen at that. And she also, of all of our executives, oversees the most people. I think she's probably got a couple hundred people under her that she oversees in some way, shape, or form. Her technical job title is EVP of mortgage operations. Well, we're a mortgage company, so pretty much everything is mortgage operations. So she plays a huge role in Summit. And I've always been impressed with her ability to hire people. And I think one of her best skills is she is very relational with her employees, which I think a lot of people are not. And she's also very accountable. And I think when the employee knows that you're holding them to a high standard and you care about them, that's when the magic happens. So that's her special skill. And I just wanted to say that. In the opening comments, I would say that I know for a lot of businesses, this isn't true for product businesses, but in our business, in most service businesses, about 80% of your costs are tied to employees. So when I say employee costs, I'm talking about not just their wages and bonuses, but vacation pay, rent for the building that you got to have, health benefits, matching payroll taxes, all of those things. When we segregate that out on a P&L, it's about, for Summit, it's about 80% of our costs. And for most service businesses, that's true. Not true for all businesses. So it's a big deal. The other thing I'll tell you is that, any business, if you're listening to this, you probably want to grow. That's why you're listening to a podcast on growth. So when you think about this, think about it like, hey, you can only do so much work. So if you've got 40 or 50 hours a week, if you want to expand at all, you're going to have employees. You're just going to have employees. That's just the way it is. There's no way around it. And you might as well learn the skill. The 3 things that just broad topics, and I'll turn it over to Kris for some opening comments. If I were to think of a Gantt chart with 3 circles on it, I think of hiring, I think of character, drive. So the character of the person, their drive level, do they want to be really good, and their job skills. And that's what I strategically think about when I'm interviewing someone. So Kris, give me some opening comments. You've hired, first of all, how long have you been hiring people? Because it's been a long time.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Todd. I am very passionate about this topic, as I think that people are our number one asset, and they're really the secret sauce to any organization. So thank you for inviting me today. Wow, in my career, I've been with Summit 12 years, and I've been a hiring manager for over 25 years. So I would say thousands of people that I've been lucky enough to hire, and I've learned a lot of skills along the way and a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. So I'm excited to share those with everybody.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, just to brag about Kris, there's been several people over the years where I kind of fall in love with them. I'm more on the emotional side, probably. Not that Kris isn't, but I've heard her in interviews, and she really goes to places that I don't. We're going to talk about that as one of the steps, is having multiple interviewers. But several times Kris has come to the point where she says, hey, I'm not in. And what we do at Summit is all the people that interview them. So say it's me and Kris and maybe the director of HR. Everyone's got to be 100% or we don't hire. Now, when we fudge that rule in the past, it bites us. And there's lots of horror stories about that. But I've just learned, if Kris says no, or if I say no, or if HR says no, we rehuddle. It doesn't always mean we don't hire the person, but it means whoever's not in for the hire, let's clearly address it and go back to the candidate and do some more research and see if a no can be a yes, or if a no still stays a no. But if a no still stays a no, it's okay. You just walk from the hire. So step one is to advertise, and it says place an ad, place an ads on social media, place an ad within your company. I would tell you my best tip on this is, and this doesn't always work and people are intimidated to do it, but I literally record like a 5-minute video about the who, what, where, why, how, and when of the position. And I think it does a few things. Number one, it gives, most people are very visual and they're very auditory. So it gives them, so I'll put a link to the video into the advertising, wherever we're advertising, LinkedIn, all those things. And a lot of people will tell me, I wasn't going to apply, but I watched that video and you look like someone that I would want to work for, and the culture you described, that fits me. And so I get that comment a lot. And that's one of my big tips with hiring. Don't do it because you're not afraid to shoot a 5-minute video. You may have to reshoot it 5 or 6 times. I've done a lot of them, so I usually don't. I'm not trying to be a professional public speaker. I'm trying to speak from the heart and give them a true feel for what the company's looking for, what that looks like, give them a feel for what it's like working here, give them a feel for pay range. I'm trying to pre-answer a lot of those questions so that the candidate can say, hey, remember, we're trying to find the good ones, right? You're not trying to find anyone to apply. You're trying to suck in the really good candidates, because that's really what you want. So that's my step on an advertising. Kris, how do you see advertising effectively for a position?
Yes, well, I think the most effective way of obtaining the best employees who fit the culture is getting referrals from your current employees, because your current employees are A players, or they wouldn't still be current employees. So they always have the best referrals. And I think to reward that as well with bonuses, it's very, very critical. I think the second step, to your point, is exactly to convey the feeling of what it's like to be a part of the team. And I think a lot of the most effective ways to do that is from a testimonial from a person who happens to be in that same role within the company. So for example, if you're hiring a receptionist, you could have a testimonial from a current receptionist at your company. So then it's peer on peer and they really understand, and it's coming from a peer and not from the hiring manager who may be selling. Because remember, the candidate is also interviewing you. So it goes both ways. And I think also having an extremely clear job description and clear vision that you can convey of what it is and what you're trying to achieve with that role is critical, and being authentic. I think that that's one of the things I've learned over my years. I'm 55 years old and I've started managing people in a big way at about 28. And I remember learning from my dad that you don't mix personal and work. You put on your work costume and you show up to work. I've learned over the years that is not true. You're authentically yourself. That's how you connect with people. And that's really the retention. And you spend most of your time at work. So you want it to be a very relationship-based atmosphere. And that's really where you're going to get the retention and the happiness.
There's a bucket of information. A couple of comments. People make decisions based on how they feel. That's most people. And so if they feel that hey, I really would respect working for that person. I feel that video was well done. I felt the warmth. When you're talking about hiring A candidates, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the best people. There's a feeling there that they're looking for. Matter of fact, I do new hire orientation, and Kris and I talk to all of them, and once a month I'll get on the phone. I did it last week, and maybe there's 30, 40 people on the call, and I just get on there and I say, what's the number one reason you came to Summit? Last week, for example, there was about 20 of them that answered that question, and literally 15 out of 20 said, it just felt right. I love the growth-oriented culture. I love how you develop people. It's all feelings. Now, we may not do any of that stuff. That's the truth. They don't know until they start, but that's the feeling that they got. And that's what's important. So there is a sales process to all of this. You are selling when you're trying to get the best candidates. And you're also being very logical driven, saying, hey, I got to test their job skills. I've got to find some character questions where they'll be honest and transparent. So there is a process to all of this stuff, but it's both a sales process and an analytical process and I think Where people go wrong is they either are too sales driven and says, I just like them, which is what I used to do, or they're too analytical and say, gosh, they didn't test right on this one area, and I don't think they're a good hire. It's both together. The second one says have a virtual bench. So do at least one interview a week and create a virtual bench. What we mean by that is when you're building a business, you're always interviewing. There's people who retire. We had 3 people last week. We had a retirement party. We have to replace those people. You have to have a virtual bench. Now, in all transparency, sometimes we've been good at this and sometimes we haven't. There have been times in my career where I'm like, hey, I'm going to overhire. I'm going to have plenty of seats. And then there's been times where I've been too stingy with that. And that's always bit me a little bit. And so we've gotten better, but it's still, 25 years running the company. It's never perfect is my point. That virtual, but what I mean by virtual bench is you should be able, let's say that you're hiring for a position. There should be 2 or 3 people you already interviewed that's like, hey, I'm going to call that person. I left it with them that, hey, I might not have a position open for a year, but it's been 3 months. They're on my drip campaign. They're in my CRM. I've been dripping on them. We had a good meeting. I just didn't have a position. Let me call them and see if they're ready. Because there's a maturation process, like a dating process that you go through with all of this. And there's been a lot of people. We just hired a key employee, and we first talked to him about 2 years ago. And we didn't really have a position open. He took another position, and then we were able to get him now. So those stories happen over and over again. Kris, talk about virtual benching, because it's a big, important topic.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Virtual benching is both an art and a science. And I think if I would say anything about a virtual bench, it would be to always keep your network strong, always be networking, always keep in touch with all of the people that you've ever spoken to, and continue to build your network and make your network as large as it can be. That's sort of the art to it. The science to it is whatever type of business you're in, always be considering what is that next career trajectory for your current people in certain roles, because they're going to want to be moving up. Who can move into that spot? So a virtual bench doesn't always mean hiring from outside. That's keeping your network strong. But internally, for your team members who are already on board, what does their career path look like? And that virtual bench might be the role that's just beneath the role they're looking for. So you're always moving people up as they earn it and continuing their growth pattern. And then you also have to look at the business and be very aware of the retirements coming up, be aware of your projections for your business, and always attempt, that's part of the art, to keep that hiring in line with your 90-day projections.
Yeah, good, really good comments. The virtual benching, Kris mentioned hiring from within and promoting from within. This is something that not to get too far off topic, but in one of the areas, well, I'll tell you 2 areas where we've done well in my company is Kris started training underwriters through a process. And underwriters in our business are very technically oriented people, and they it's a very specialized field, and there's no schooling for it, so they got to kind of learn it. And you fast forward, and 50-60% of our underwriters today are homegrown, we call them, right? So but the loyalty that comes with that, and the relationships, and they're like, hey, I started out making 30 grand a year. And then, I went into this program, and 4 years later, I'm underwriting loans and I'm making, double that. That's the idea. And that's what Kris is talking about when virtual benching from within. And it's something that are getting really good at. We've done the same thing with loan officers. I just got off a coaching call with my coaches that are in my company. And I said, hey, we always go over success stories. We have this one kid, he was an attorney, and he's in our Dallas office, and he didn't want to be an attorney anymore. He just didn't like it. And he's pretty young, and he starts in the business, and this is his 4th month in the business, and he closed 9 loans and made, $40,000 or something. And the coach was raving about this person, said, this person is sharp. We're teaching this person the journey that he's on is 2-3 years long to learn how to do all this stuff. And we're pouring into him. He's got a coach. He's got a great branch manager. He works on a team, all these people supporting him. And it's very fun to do that. And the feeling that I would tell you is it's like raising children. You know how your kid scores the goal or, scores the football game or whatever. That's the feeling that everyone gets. It's universal, and it feels very good to help develop people throughout their career path. And it's something that we really enjoy and are getting better and better at.
And I think on that, all of us have been so lucky throughout our career to remember that people took the time to develop us, and to pay that forward, I think is really critical.
Who was one of those people for you, Kris? I'm curious.
Oh my gosh, Idana Desiree Davenport. That was one of my very first people who helped develop me. I stayed with her for over 9 years. And really, she supported me going on to that next step because I had grown out of the organization that I was with before. But she was just very kind with her time, would take the time to sit with me and really ask me what my career goals are. And then I would go off and I would sort of learn things and come back and say, see what I learned, what's next? So really, we've all had people help develop us. And I think it's incumbent upon us and our responsibility as leaders to pay that forward.
Yes, I agree with that. I will also add to that all the A players that I've ever met, people that are top 10 percenters in their field, the one thing they always have in common is they have one or two or three or four mentors that poured into them. Kris probably had two or three or four. I've had two, three, four. It's that's the difference. And she said something that was key. She gave me her time. And some of you listen to this, sometimes it's just asking people for their time. And I've had so many different business ventures where I'm thinking of going into a certain area. I don't really know what I'm doing. And so I call someone really good at it and I ask them for their time. Never once has someone turned me down. Never once. Matter of fact, I have this one guy, this is just about a year and a half ago, and he's a big land developer. And I was doing some land development and I didn't really know what I was doing. I said, hey, bud, I don't know you that well, but could I take you to breakfast and poke your brain? He not only gave me 4 hours on a Sunday, he's now one of my good friends. We're going on vacation together for a week in Florida. Like, we've become friends. And I don't pay him anything. He's just trying to help me because he spent 40 years learning this trade and he's happy to help me. So just a point on that. Let's talk about resume selection. I would tell you a couple things that I look for. I look for neatness of the resume, like coffee stains and that kind of stuff. That's just, if you don't look at your stuff before you send it to a future boss, that's a problem. I look to, do they live close to the office? I don't believe that most people, there are exceptions to this. Most people won't commute for 40 or 50 minutes for a job. There are exceptions, but by and large, they're going to take the job because they need to eat, but then they'll find another job closer, typically. Okay. None of these are rules, right? These are just guidelines. And do they appear to have the job skills? And we're going to get into job skills a little bit more. I will tell you, I did hire my first IT person ever. This is about 22 years ago. And she sat at her desk. She had an IT degree from a university. And she looked over at a coworker and said, what is this thing that's on this pad? And she was referring to a mouse on a computer. And I did not believe the employee came over and told me, hey, this person doesn't know what a mouse is. I met with her later that day. I thought she was misunderstanding. She was not. And I literally hired someone with a college degree that did not know what a mouse was. I swear to God, that is a true story. And it shocked me. It never occurred to me to do a job test with someone who was an IT person. Now I think, yeah, of course, you got to do something to know that they know their trade. So those are a few things that I look for. Kris, what do you look for in a resume?
Yes, a resume can tell you a lot of things, but it can't tell you everything. So one of the biggest things I look for in a resume is what are their objectives? So some candidates will write a cover letter and of course the grammar, etc. But what I'm really looking for is what is that passion? What's their objective? Is it well defined and clarified? That tells me that you have someone who has thought about their career goals. The second thing I'm looking for is practical experience. So you're talking about the degree versus the practical experience. I personally would take practical experience over a degree. That's me personally, because they've actually done the job. Very important for me around job hopping. I'm looking for long-term team members. That just fits the culture. It fits the passion. That's where you get A players. And it's frankly, it's costly, and it's costly to the candidate. It doesn't do them a service to hire them, have it not be a fit and leave. So I look for job hopping. And I think, again, just that practical skill set, and also that they've been promoted throughout their career. So I like to look at a natural progression of their job. And if I see that they've moved back, then we're going to have a conversation about that. It's not a no-go. It's a let's have a conversation about that, because some people, I love people who are self-aware enough to say, ooh, thought I really wanted to be a manager, learned what that was all about, and decided not so much. They're self-aware, they understand. So again, these are things that help tip me off on how to really talk about it when I'm actually doing the interview.
Mm-hmm. I want to add a big tidbit here that Kris reminded me of. When you talk about job hoppers, here's what you got to be careful of in hiring. We're talking about hiring A players, and also how not to hire D and F players. One of the things that you find with job hoppers is listen for blame. My boss this, my company did this, I oftentimes will stop. This is more getting into phone screening, but I will stop them and say, actually, I know a lot of people at that company that are very successful, and I'm trying to get them to take accountability. So here's the problem. If that person is a blamer, that is a good indicator that they are what I call an office terrorist. This gets super personal because as soon as I tell you this story, everyone can think of somebody. Okay, hopefully it's not you. When you go into an organization and you have, say, 10 people working together or 30 people working together, and it doesn't feel right, the culture is off, it seems a little negative, there's infighting, almost always you've got an office terrorist, and they're going around the office and they're saying things like I come up to someone at the copier and they say, did you see what Sherry's wearing today? Meaning, I don't like Sherry and I'm trying to hurt her and I'm trying to get you on my side like a little playground person, right? I'm telling you, these people ruin your companies, I feel very passionate about this. There are all kinds of shapes and sizes of office terrorists. A players are never that way. A players take self-responsibility. They talk about first person. They don't say, oh, the market did this to me. My boss did this to me. You just don't hear that from those people. And so that's something to look for, which leads us to phone screening. So I put on here, develop rapport. By the way, this visual that I flashed to a couple of times during this, a lot of you guys are listening to this auditorily. You can always go to beyourbestseries.com and get these handouts. And I encourage you to do that. Phone screening, develop rapport. Listen, you don't want to be a robot. So much of life is about emotional intelligence. If I am, say, someone in Kris's position, she's an executive for a big company, they're intimidated. They don't have your skills, and you want to come across warm and inviting if that's how you want people to be treated and want to portray your culture. So yes, it takes a little excitement. It takes a little energy, right? And I think that a lot of people struggle with that. They're just like, hey, thanks for getting on the call. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you that. And it's like, whoa, dude, can you say hello, right? Number two, ask them to complete the pre-hire package and pay attention. Do they actually do it? Right? Judge people by their actions, not their words. Number three, verbally ask them about credit reports, background checks, things that are legal. Different states have different laws. We're not HR attorneys. These are just guidelines. So I might say something general like, how is your past credit history? If that's a legal question. I might say, hey, if we get to job offer stage, we're going to run a background report. Is there anything I should know? Is there anything that will come up? That's a totally appropriate question. You want to start this this relationship right. You want to be direct. You want to be honest. You want to be forthright. There's no reason to hide the fact that you're going to do a background check in 2 weeks. If they had 3 DUIs, let them tell you. Okay, they might have a great explanation, right? So be very upfront about those things. And then the other thing that I say is step 4, make sure that you email them company information, videos, job descriptions. I did an interview this morning, actually, and I got on the phone, and the after we said some nice things, the gentleman said, hey, I watched every single video that Caleb sent me about your company. And that told me, A, he's interested, B, he knows something about me and the company. He's done some research. Now, this person happens to be one of the best in his field, so it didn't surprise me, but it was pleasant. It's like, oh, he did some research. Like, hey, if I'm going to spend some time doing this, I'm going to seriously consider coming to this company. I want to know about them. And it instantly told me he's paying attention. He's got some smarts in him, right? So, Kris, when you're phone screening someone, what's a couple things that you look for?
Yeah, for sure, on time. On time, ready to go, direct eye contact. I'm looking, when you talk about emotional intelligence, the first thing I do is I diffuse the situation by telling them who I am, where I live, what I like. I love animals. Everybody knows that. I live out in the middle of the state. I give them personal information about myself, so then they follow that lead, because I think typically you're right, candidates are nervous. And if you set the tone for the interview, then they're going to be more open. So I start by being exceedingly open with them, and then they can be open back with me. I also like to ask why. Like, why are you looking? What's their why? What are they looking for in a company? Why are they looking now? You will learn a lot about where they are in their life and what it is that they're looking for long-term in a company. And from a screening standpoint, that's going to tell you right out the gate if you're on the right track, if this is someone to go to that next level. So I think people who don't have a well-developed why maybe are sort of floundering at this juncture in their life. It doesn't mean it's a no, but it means let's explore that a little bit more. And again, I would go deeper into that on an interview, because I want someone to have a well-formed why, because how do you really know if it's a fit either way if they don't know?
Love that. On the bottom of my handout, there is the why question. How I say it is, when you work for a company, what's most important to you? And they might say pay. And I always say why at least 3 times. I want to get to what's the real reason? What's the emotional reason? So I did that today with this gentleman I was just talking about. And I said, what's the number one thing that's most important to you about working for a company? It took me 5 different times before he said it. And if you're paying attention, when you got them. When they really said really what they're concerned about, really what they care about. You see their face change. Their voice inflection will change. Sometimes their coloring will change. You got them. Like, you got to the real answer, because all the other 4 answers were true, just not the one. And that line of questioning, if you watch really good interviews like Barbara Walters and Dr. Phil, they model all these things we're talking about. Be very direct, ask very open-ended questions, ask why 3 times. All of them do it. We're talking about effective communication. If you don't ask these things, you don't know the candidate. You don't know the why, as Kris said. So critically important. Let's jump into multiple interviews. So review and set 3 in-person interviews. So in interviews, I ask more character questions and I ask job skill questions. Job skill questions, if someone's a salesperson, sometimes I say, hey, you're calling on me, ring, ring. And they look at me like, what are you doing? I said, we're doing a role play. You're going to sell me. And if they totally don't know what to say, like if someone did that to me because I sell a lot, I would play along, right? And I know what to say. So it gives you the point is not to embarrass them. The point is to find out, hey, how good are their sales skills? Because if they're good, they'll roll right along with it, right? No different than if Kris is asking a technical question to a very technical person and they don't know the answer, that's a problem, okay? Written questions to fill out. So I do this quite often where I'll ask a bunch of questions that I want to know. Why did you leave your last job? What was your biggest frustration at your last company? What's the best company you ever worked for, and why do you say that? Just things that I want to know, okay? Sell them on you and the company. You can always gauge this. Remember, you're trying to hire A players. The easy ones who will come to you, I'm not going to say you don't want them, but you usually don't. You want the really good ones that are harder to get. They're like, I'm not really looking, right? And you got to sell them. There's a sales process to all this to get the A players, not to get the C players, to get the A players, okay? And have them take different tests. So I like Strength Finder. I like the drive test or the grit test, some people call it. I like using the DISC test. I like using workplace motivators tests. These are all things that they're pretty telling. Like when I take Strength Finder, Caleb and I are looking for some big positions right now, and we modeled the person that we want based on some personality tests that he and I had done. I said, really what we're looking for is many yous and me's. That's really what we're looking for. And so we modeled out, what do those tests look like? A lot of people don't do that. I've got a friend of mine, all he does is he uses DISC, and he's a consultant. That's all he does is he's like, look at, you send me their DISC along with the job description. Sometimes he'll even interview the person as a third party. And I would say because I've referred him to a lot of people, I would say he's probably dead on about 8 out of 10 times. Like, it's uncanny how good he is at hiring. And there is a piece of this that is scientific. So as you go through this process, at some point, you want to have some testing. And as Kris alluded to earlier, if you have already 3 A players in this position, compare their tests to those 3 people's tests. So some of this is scientific. So those are some, and of course, the whole point of the multiple in-person meetings is because if someone, I'll just use me, if I'm going to interview them, I'm mainly going to focus on is this a high character person? I will look at things like their previous results. But then I know, just because Kris and I say, hey, you're going to interview Kris, she's more technical and she'll grind on them. I don't really do that. And I'll grind on a character issue like, hey, why did you really leave the last company? Were you fired? Like, I'll get in their grill on that stuff. But Kris has got a more technical personality. She's going to ask more technical. And sometimes she's come back to me and said, that person doesn't know what they're doing. I'm like, oh, well, they have really good character. She's like, they won't be able to execute. So there's a reason why you have different personalities interview the person. So Kris, some thoughts on setting some multiple interviews?
Yeah, multiple interviews are absolutely critical. I think we all see the world through our own lens, and that's a very selfish sort of place to view the world, but we can't help it. We're humans. It's our lens with our backgrounds and experiences. So always what I would say on this is be clear about your own personal weakness. So if I'm hiring someone for my team, I'm going to hire to my weakness. If I'm hiring a person to add to an existing team, I know what that team's weakness is, and I'm hiring to fill that gap. So for example, say I have someone who has great emotional intelligence, but is challenged with process or technical skill set. I'm going to hire someone to fill that gap, a yin to a yang. I think a lot of times people spend too much time working on their weaknesses rather than hiring to their weakness. Because I think the key to really enjoying your life is to keep your people and yourself to your highest and best skill set every day. And the reason you want to have your team members, whoever the team is that this person is joining, have them interview them as well, is because buy-in. Now it's a little tribe, and you're bringing a new person into the tribe. You want acceptance and you want buy-in for both parties. And again, they'll see things through their lens. So absolutely critical, at least 2 or 3 interviews.
Really good, guys. Kris says you can tell is really good at this. Yeah, you're going to get drastically different opinions on that stuff, and it's very common. Just to be direct, it's common for one of the people to be snowed. I call it being snowed, and then the other person finds them out. It happens all the time. Mm-hmm. We have a gentleman. We made a unanimous decision to hire, and then he didn't start by his start date, and this just happened this week, and we're like, yeah, that's not going to work. Like, if you're not going to communicate at this level of position and just send us a text saying, hey, I'm not starting, and not give any reason, like, that's a problem, right? So we obviously missed something. Now, I interviewed him twice for about 30 minutes. I thought he was an A player. I was wrong. It's okay to say that. I make mistakes all the time. We're not perfect. The other 2 people who interviewed him were in. So I thought, hey, this person's, usually when I get a majority vote, we're in. Like, this is going to be a great deal, but it wasn't. So that hiring is never perfect. Managing people is never, I don't think anything's perfect, But what we're trying to do is not make major mistakes. And this particular recruiting talent is a major one. I see it hurt more businesses than almost anything else, maybe number one. So,
and Todd, you bring up a good point. I'm sorry to interrupt. You bring up a very good point about doing a postmortem. So meet regularly on your wins and your losses, repeat your wins and the misses. What can you learn from that decision? Was there anything that we missed, and to really examine that so we don't repeat the same issues, if at all possible.
Yep. Interview with the team. Kris alluded to this. That's step 6. You want their buy-in. You want to start a relationship. And this is where, for example, it depends on how you're set up, but let's say that they're going to be working with 5 other employees. Have them come in and have lunch with them, introduce them, give them some praise, talk about, introduce each other, and then just leave. You don't have to be there. You want them to talk. And don't be surprised what comes out of that. I've had people do that, and I had one client come back to me and say, yeah, she shared with us that her husband's a drug addict and that she's had 2 DUIs, and it's just like crazy. I'm like, she doesn't have the job yet. I've had crazy things where they are meeting with their coworkers for like a lunch, and they just open up stuff that you never knew. You haven't hired them yet, so that you can say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. You want the best people. This is kind of like an NBA draft. Like, you're trying to draft the best players to dunk that basketball. And if you draft a 4'2" player, they're not going to dunk the basketball, right? And that's the whole point of why we're doing this, is we want to find the best players. If you think about, take a smaller company, take a 10-person company. That 10-person company is doing about 400 hours of work a week. You have people who can execute at a very high level and get 400 to 600 hours done. And then if you have office terrorists and people that don't have the job skills, you're going to get about 100 hours of work done. And this is a major reason why companies fail, because the owners and managers can't do it all. And you need to rely on people that can get things done. So there's a lot to this, but it starts with the right candidate. Number 7 is written job offers. Kris, do you have any comments on 6 as far as them meeting with their coworkers?
No, I think you hit them. The one thing I would say is you're exactly right. Meeting with the coworkers, they will open up differently because it's not as intimidating as someone with a big fancy title. And if I'm hiring for my own team, I tell my team members and I tell the candidate, talk openly about what it feels like to work for me. I want them to know, because they need to be successful. And for example, if I was hiring into the training team, I want them to talk about what it feels like working for the manager of the training team, so that people, because the worst thing ever is to have someone surprised when they come into, to do the job. Because again, I look at people as lifers. We're taking them from a current job. I have a responsibility to them. Their success is my success. Their failure is my failure. So I want to be open and clear about all of it.
Yeah, too often times, Kris, I sometimes think that employers don't take it serious enough to do a 2-way interview like you're suggesting. Like I told the gentleman today, I interviewed 2 people today, and I said, look, I'm going to text you some people to call that are in this position, but you can go on our website, just so you don't think I'm just giving you great people to call, and call any single one of them and say, Todd said I could call you, and just say, what is it like working here? What do you like best? What do you like worst? What's the most frustrating? What was the most pleasant surprise? Like, I will give them questions to ask it because they may not know. You want people, like, why would you want someone to come into an organization and feel duped or lied to?
Right.
That's not a relationship, right? That's not it's not going to last, because they already feel lied to, right? So
nobody wins.
Nobody wins. Written job offer. Email them a written job offer and call them and go over it. Sometimes I do this the next day if I want them to digest it, because I think sometimes when people sleep on things, they have a chance to think about it more clearly. Kris and I are working on hiring some consultants, so I've done 2 interviews the last 2 days. And now these are professional, big, mid-sized business consultants. Both of them said, I said, hey, send me your proposal. Both of them said, do you have this time? We do this in person. We do it on video. And they're smart. They don't want to send me what the bill is. They want to look at my face when I get it. They want to talk about it. They want to talk through it. They have a higher closing percentage. And that's what this is. So you're making a job offer to someone, and it's it's harder like on a video or in person to say no. It's also easier to talk about the concerns that both of you have about it. So make sure that you're setting up a time over video or in person to go over the job offer. It not only comes across respectful, you can tell, are they interested? All kinds of things, right? Body language. So, Kris, what's your spin on number 7?
Number 7, written job offer. I can't express how absolutely critical defining what the role really is, what it really is, and what their top 3 focuses are, and how they will be measured. And the reason that is so important, I think it's a basic, fundamental human need to be successful. And if you don't know how you're going to be measured, how do you ever know that you're successful? And I'll tell you a story. I do a lot of visits to some of our locations. And when I go in and I have people introduce themselves, I ask them what it is that they do, what their job title is. And then I ask them, what are your top 3 focuses? And how do you know when you're successful? If they can't answer that, what you have is someone who comes in, gives their heart and soul for 8 hours, and they don't know if they're successful. So uber critical to have that job description dialed in. And when you're communicating with the candidate, talk about it, because there's a lot of times you think you're being very clear in the job description and it's not very clear. And especially on those measurements, because people, again, they really, really need to know how they can be successful and succeed every day. People want to be successful. I have a basic belief system. People want to be really great and they want to do their best. And we just need to lead them into that. So
100%. This is something that Kris has helped me with. I would always give people job responsibilities, and I believe in 3, but I didn't measure them. So now when we do job descriptions, you say top 3 job responsibilities, and then how they're measured. In other words, what does success look like? When you're succeeding, you're doing this. And it's different for every position. And it can be, sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's a metric, sometimes it's a percentage, but you want to be clear on that, because to Kris's point, hey, if I'm supposed to dunk the basketball 3 times a game and I don't know that, and then you get mad at me for it, for not dunking, I'm confused and I'm frustrated. So that's her point. It's very simple, but it's a very, very, very critical point. Talk about training. So I'm going to simplify this, and then Kris oversees our training department. She'll have more to it, but here's the very least that I tell people. I'm like, look at, this is hard to generalize because there's so many different jobs, but at least 4 hours of training a day for the first week. That's like they need to know what to do. They need to know how to work the phone system. They need to know how the email works. They need to know people's names. They need to know where the bathroom is. Like, these are, and certainly there's more technical things that are taught that week, but that's very important. And then another 30 minutes a day of training for 1 to 2 months. Sounds like a lot. I would say in my career, I underestimated training until the last few years, a lot. And now we're super into it, and we've hired more trainers, and we're getting super serious about it. But I really did underestimate training. That was if there was one thing I would correct in my business life, that would be one. I let me tell you why the mistake I made. I'm a very fast learner. And if I don't know something, I ask. Those 2 traits I just said usually don't happen with an employee. They usually don't ask because they're intimidated and they feel dumb. I don't, for whatever reason, I know I'm dumb, so I don't worry about it. And number 2, they won't, some people learn at different rates. Some of my best employees are slow learners, but once they got it, they got it. So because I'm such a fast learner, I think everyone else is that way. And that's not true. And I'm not complimenting myself. My problem is I will learn something and then have to relearn it because I learned it so fast. So, everyone's got different learning styles. Kris, what is your advice to people on training?
gosh, okay. My advice is you've gone through the screening process, you've landed your candidate, now your real job starts, right? That was great, but now literally they're yours. And again, their success and their failure is really, really up to you. And so I cannot say this enough. Have a very specific set agenda on how they're going to spend their first 30 days. I literally give them a calendar, and it's literally everything they're going to do each and every day. And the point of that, again, is people need to feel successful. And that first 30 days is really spent building their tribe, building their support system, introducing them to all of the different departments they'll be working with, getting them emotionally attached and integrated into the team system. I invite them to all of the different meetings. They're there to observe, because the first 30 days is, again, really about observing, developing support, understanding the really culture and learning that vibe. So 30 days worth of agendas, Monday through Friday, how they spend their time. I can't express enough to you, every single day, that hiring manager, if you hire them, I just hired a new person. I met with her every single day. I still meet with her every single day for at least the first 90 days. Because remember, this is a new duckling into your nest, and you need to really understand, what are they struggling with? Are they acclimating? Do they have any questions? Because to Todd's point, they're probably not going to ask. They're overwhelmed. It's a lot of information. So please, please spend at least every day, spend some time with them and have their days full. Otherwise, you don't want them floundering around. Very, very critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. So I love that tip, having 30-day calendar out so that they know what they're doing. Mine is, hey, 30 minutes a day, at least 4 hours a day for the first week. Whatever you do, but you got to do it. Like
Yeah.
whatever rings true for you and that fits for your business, you got to do it. I can't tell you how important training is. It's your first impression. They're nervous as heck. They don't know anybody. It's very scary. Changing jobs ranks up there with getting burned by fire. Like, people really, really, in studies, hate to change jobs. They hate it, right? So once they do it, they're very scared. Last thing, we've just got 12 minutes left. Keeping them. So I say, hey, do 6-month reviews. You got to have a meeting and say, hey, you're doing well, you're not doing well. Here's the things I want you to improve. Have fun in the workplace. We spend over 60% of our waking hours at work. I think you want to have a fun working environment. We do tons of games and bowling and all kinds of things that are just fun for people, which may not be fun to you, but you're the leader, so you got to make it happen. Fun outings once a month. Again, COVID times, that's hard, but doing something fun. I have some of my team members, departments doing virtual happy hours. And I thought you said, I did a few. I said, okay, well, they're doing it, I got to do it. And I had a ball. Like, it was like, wow, okay, you can do a virtual happy hour. I never thought of that. Lots of short-term and long-term recognition. I called one of our employees that had a 10-year anniversary today. Kris and I had one that had a year anniversary. So I called her, and when you call them, really pour it on, really be transparent on how much you appreciate them. I think sometimes people hold back. It's okay to show your emotion and say, dude, you've changed this company. You're a huge asset. Okay. I could go on and on. I put down here, have an extremely respectful and transparent communication. Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book on this, about the alignment in the workplace, and the culture is what trumps strategy. And I have found that to be very true. So, Kris, a couple thoughts from you about how to keep people engaged and happy.
Wow. The first thing is connection, that human connection. So I look at, our company or any company, it's its own ecosystem, it's its own tribe, and people want to belong. I think that's just a general overarching need for people. So again, having the team member be integrated into the current culture, by inviting them again into all of the meetings, by meeting with them once a week. I even have fun games around, gosh, let's name our team, and that sounds silly, but it's a point of pride. And then what's our mission statement? What does it mean to be a part of this team? Great. And then when someone exhibits those values, great, they're an honorary team member. It's just really those types of things to build that human connection, and always check in with them. Do you have questions? Are we meeting the goals, what we discussed for this job as a company? Are we providing to you the culture we discussed about? Are there any concerns? The thing is, no one should ever be surprised where they stand. So where they stand, where the candidate stands with the company and where the company stands with the candidate. It's a two-way street, and it should never be surprising if something's not going right. You should always know that. And how you know that is communication. And I also think giving that team member their own group to belong to, and that's outreach. So we do a lot of things where, for example, I might have an operations manager out in a branch. Well, I hook them up with all the other branch operations managers. Now they have their peers where they can really belong, talk about things peer to peer, because it is different talking peer to peer as opposed to talking manager to employee. Very different connections there. It's important to have both, but really assimilating them and help building their network of connection. And that really connects them to the company rather than connecting them to the individual. And that's a long-term retention benefit for the company, so that if that one person, that one manager, they're connected to only them and that manager leaves, guess what? But if that candidate's connected through a web of the company, that candidate's loyal to the company. So I think that that's a critical thing to always remember.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. So guys, we're covered. This is one of those things where there's a lot of nuggets in here. It's one of those things where if I'm a business owner and you like what we're talking about, I would probably play this for your team. Say, hey guys, we're going to watch this silly podcast, or sometimes some of you are watching it visual, sometimes auditory. You probably, if you want to be a successful business person, you're like, hey, there's a lot of nuggets in there. Listen to it like 5 times. Make notes. Develop a to-do list on, hey, I need to do A, B, and C. And then 3 months later, I'm going to start 6-month reviews. I'm going to do a potluck once a month with the whole company. These are things that you implement over time. And that's how you build a business. And so that's what we're talking about. We've all seen the stats on what it costs, attrition rates and stuff. As a something that we do is we compare our attrition rates with employees with our companies, or excuse me, our industry's average. What you get, whatever you focus on. So since we focused on that, I noticed our attrition rate went way down, right? And we just started doing a lot of other little things that have helped us. One of the things, I started sending out a video 3 days a week during COVID, and people liked it so much that I kept sending them out. Because we're all remote now, right? Well, and in my company, we're in several different states. So we don't get a chance to see each other. So a video is better than nothing. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to always get a little bit better and tweak it a little bit more, or make something that you're doing already a little bit better. So this is what we talked about is hiring A players. We want to get the best ones. I'm telling you, it's how you're going to build a business. You can show me any business that's doing really good long-term. I will tell you for sure, there's at least a group of really good employees. And that's what makes that company tick. So Kris, some closing comments from you?
Oh, yes. Gosh, I could go on about this forever, but I'll be quick. Don't rush to hire. There should be a barrier to entry. Your company is special, treat it as such, and you're only as good as your people. If you always focus on your people first, you're going to win. Everything else is going to come after that. So if anything, this process, pour into it. It's the most important thing that you're going to do. When you bring on a person who doesn't work out, not only is there collateral damage to the culture, there's monetary damage, and there's damage to people. So again, make this process robust, and don't hurry, because mistakes happen when you hurry. Just don't put a cheek in a seat. Just really take your time on this, because it is the most important thing you can do.
Guys, this is, when I started this series, I want to remind you, what my goal is to give you some real things to do. My intent is not to have you do all of them. That's not how learning works. So you want to take 1 or 2 things, maybe stick it in your calendar. Hey, I'm going to do these 2 things, and then next month I'm going to listen to that podcast again. I want to give you real information. If you were to hire Kris or me to come consult, it would be like $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 an hour. So this is really high level people giving you really good information. I would guess between Kris and I, we've probably hired 3,000 people. So we're really good at this. This is how we do it. It's a process. I'll end with a quick story. I made, my mom growing up always made Easter bread. And it's like, it's this big, it's kind of like, it's Italian Easter bread. It's like, it's a cross between like a sweet bagel and a donut. But so I called my mom last week. I said, hey, I want to make that for Easter. And she's like, you can try. It's really hard. And I said, Mom, I'm going to follow the recipe. Do you have it? She says, yeah. So my nephew was staying the weekend. And I said, nephew, we're going to make this Easter bread and see, we're going to challenge ourselves. So he read the directions word for word. He would repeat them several times. This was like a 4-hour process of knead this, let it rise for an hour, come back, put in this, let it rise for an hour. It was this whole thing. I'm thinking it's going to be horrible. So I get up Easter morning and we're finally able to taste this Easter bread. And it was awesome. So I called my mom and I said, Mom, I said, I got good news and bad news. And she's like, well, I was going to call you. How's the Easter? I said, well, that's what I'm talking about. She says, well, what's the good news? I said, it came out awesome. Like, this is literally what I remember all those years you making. She said, well, what's the bad news? I said, Mom, it's better than yours.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So you're like, Todd, why are you talking about Easter bread? Here's my point. You can accomplish anything with the proper recipe. These are 9 steps that have some details to it. If you just follow this process and you don't skip steps, you will be a much more successful at hiring A players. And that's the whole point of this, is to develop those business skills, these step-by-step, these recipes we're giving you so that you can build your business. And whatever that is at the end of that rainbow, you're looking for to work less, or you're looking to make more money, or you're looking to decrease costs, whatever all those things are that we all work on, this is one of the ways that we get there. Do me a favor, if you like this, forward it to 3 people and just say, 3 other business owners, they're not good at hiring, send it to them, right? Text it to them and say, hey, listen to this person, listen to these 2 crazy people talking about hiring. And all these steps they got to go through to do it right. Guys, we're just doing this to help people. That's really what this is about. I wanted to do something that gave back to people and took people like Kris Ringrose, who has this massive knowledge on hiring people, and share it with the restaurant owner, share it with the department manager that works for a big company and wants to brush up her skills. That's what this is for. It's about doing something to help each other together. And don't forget, we do home loans for a living. So if someone needs to purchase a house or refinance a property, email or text the person back that you somehow you got this. Or if you don't know someone, you can send us say, hey, I don't know who to go to, but here's the state and city I'm in. We'll find you. We'll send you a team that will help you. So guys, thanks for listening. And Kris, thank you for being so gracious with your time. As always, you were spot on and awesome.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Happy hiring.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be.